Hello there, everyone. How are you doing? Woohoo! It's Monday and it's coffee time career chat. So, as you join in, let me know that you're there. Make sure you click on the StreamYard so that I can see who you are and where you're coming from. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. My name is Patricia Hayes. I am an executive advisor, career empowerment coach, and authentic networking strategist. And I love to help people to up level in their careers and in their businesses so that they can leverage their professional relationships and networks to achieve the goals that they have for their careers, for their lives, for their businesses, but to do so in a way that's authentic, in a way that's aligned with their purposes and with their core values. So, we are here ready to jump in with today's coffee chat. Our topic today is realigning your networking mindset. And this is so timely because not just because it's the beginning of the year, it's something that, beginning of the calendar year, this is something that we probably need to do at least quarterly, if it not at a minimally, twice a year. However, it's so timely right now, in particular, because of the ongoing situation that we find ourselves in this unique time in history. We are completing year two of being in an international pandemic. Who would have ever thought we would be saying that? And so it's time to pull our heads out of the sand. It's like this is where we are for a hot minute. And what does that mean for us professionally? What does that mean for us in our businesses? Well, here's what it's looking like it's going to mean. I literally just read a piece this morning that the LinkedIn economist, and forgive me, I forget her full name. I think it was Karen something. But anyway, it was a piece where she apparently was doing some discussions on 60 Minutes last night. But the article talks about the fact that previously, um, 1 in 67 jobs was remote. 1 in 67. But now in our current times, it's 1 in 7. 1 in 7, y'all. So what does that mean? It means that work as we know it has changed forever, right? There's no going back. People are like, oh, I can't wait for us to get back. Forget that. I keep telling people we're not going back to the way things were. And in some cases, that's a good thing, right? We need to adjust. We need to, reevaluate where we are, which brings us to our topic for today. Because here's the thing, it doesn't matter whether you were super confident in how you interacted with your professional relationships before, or whether you're like, I'm an introvert, I'm really not comfortable. It doesn't matter. Everybody's world has been turned upside down. And so we all need to realign our networking mindset. We need to take a look at what it is we have been doing and how that needs to change in our current climate, how that needs to be adjusted. So we're going to talk a little bit about that here today. And I'll look and check because I know that there are some other things I've talked about similarly related to this, and I'll try to make sure and put those in the comments as it comes up. But here's the reality is no matter where you are in your career, no matter what it is you're doing, what your status is, we all have space and time for reflection. Y'all know that's my thing, right? Take that time to do some reflection, to sit, hopefully in a quiet space, even if it's only for 5 or 10 minutes. And let's talk about and think about what it is we need to revisit. Okay. Because even if you are someone who, let's say, you're one of those six people who doesn't get to work remotely, you don't get to work from home or whatever, and you're still having to go in to an office or to a workspace, that doesn't mean that how you're interacting with your colleagues has not changed. It in fact has changed because there's so much fewer of you perhaps in the workspace, or you're having to integrate and align how you communicate with people who are both right there in front of you, as well as those who are coming in a couple of times a week versus those who are fully remote. Right? We are all living and operating in very unusual times. And regardless of it being the beginning of a new calendar year, this is an issue that is going to be ongoing. So I encourage you to continue to revisit this over the course of this year and make the realignments and the adjustments as needed. So here are my three, I like my little points here. Here, I have 3 points for you on as you're realigning your mindset when it comes to this connecting, reconnecting, and networking in today's times. First of all, we really need to identify where you are stuck in a but it has to be done this way mindset. All right. I know there are a lot of people out there who are like that, who are still holding out hope for things to, quote, go back to the way they were, and to say, but this is not how this is done or whatever. That is a very limiting mindset. It's one oftentimes based in some limiting belief, some limiting function where you're afraid to move forward, right? So it's much easier to say, but no, this is how we have to do this because this is the way we've always done it. And we know so many of us, we really don't like when we're in that space, right? When we're talking to someone whose only rationale for not moving forward or not changing is, well, this is the way we've always done it. And if we haven't already started learning that, I hope that you are learning it right now, which is that doesn't fly anymore. Using that as an excuse doesn't fly. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't people who are still trying to do it. Sure, they are. But those people, those companies, those entities who are still operating with that mindset are going to be left behind. Bottom line, if you're not willing to shift, if you're not willing to adjust, and you're stuck in, but this is the way we've already always done it, and this is the way it has to be done, you're going to have some serious problems, right? And that's not just talking about with how we interact with each other professionally. That's how we run the businesses, how we work in the workspace, how we collaborate. All of these things have shifted tremendously in the last 2 years and are looking to continue to do so. Businesses, folks who have really drugged their feet on it, like they're scrambling because they realize this is it. We have to adjust to where we are now and figure out how we're going to move forward. And so, as entities and organizations do that, we as individuals have to do so as well. And so, I highly encourage you to take that reflection time to set aside some time to sit and think, where are those spaces? Where are those things where I'm kind of like, well, no, but this is the way we've always done it. So, I can't change from that, right? Maybe it's how you talk to people as far as the method or platform. Maybe it's, well, we don't normally send text messages or we don't normally do X, Y, and Z. And we'll talk a little bit about that, the boundary piece next. But it's those things that we normally would not have done pre 2020, pre pandemic, that now we have to consider and we have to reevaluate and make an informed decision about how and if this plays into our new mode of operation moving forward. Okay. I'm not saying that everything just automatically has to change and you can't do any of the things we did before. That is not what I'm saying. What I am saying, however, is for those people who refuse to even consider looking and, and evaluating at the things that you've been doing before, that is the problem. Right. We may be able to look at some of those things, say, you know what, that's still something that's good. That's something that we can still do, but maybe it needs to be tweaked, right? For example, I mean, what's our common way for interacting with people? It's always been email. And so that's just doubling down on that, right? Because, hello, we're remote. Majority of us are still, a large proportion of people are still working remote. Well, here's the thing. But when so many people are working remote and being inundated with email because they don't have the water cooler conversations or they're not running into people at lunch, um, how can you reevaluate whether email should be your primary source of communication, right? Because then you start feeling frustrated when people aren't responding, and it's because they've got, 200 emails in their inbox for one day. So think about that. Think about that. Those are the things we have to reassess and reevaluate. So sometimes, oh my gosh, we may have to actually pick up the phone and call somebody. I have to remind people, I did it last week, that these little mini computers that we carrying around our hands are actually intended for us to talk to people one on one, and that's something that can still happen, right? And some of these things where, before we would never have talked about this quote teleconferencing. That was something that was very high level, and the big fancy companies did it. And now we're all doing it via Zoom, just like I'm delivering this, training and this coffee chat the same way, and have been for 2 years now. Okay. So these are the things that we have to continue to take that time, sit down, figure out where we have a mindset of that can't change because, and reevaluate that. Be willing to get uncomfortable and to challenge that way of thinking so that it can help you to move forward as you choose to seek out your new goals, your career and business transitions in this coming calendar year. All right. I spent a little time there, but it's really important because you would be surprised at how many people are still in the I can't do that because mindset. And it's one of those things that really does take some time. It's a journey, and it takes daily practice to undo. All right. So happy to chat further with people if you want to hit me up in the DM about what that entails. The second point I want to make is that connecting looks different, and so should your boundaries. This is super, super important on so many levels. I mean, I cannot even begin to cover all of this. I think this is one of those that really is probably on its own, that this needs to be a whole discussion on its own, right? And it probably will be. But for these purposes here today, when we're talking about realigning our mindset and how we're engaging, the reality is, as I've already stated, we are not connecting with people in our quote normal fashions, in our pre-pandemic fashions only. We're not just running into people at the water cooler. We're not just running into people at the coffee shop. There's a little bit more of that as people are moving around, but they're doing so much more cautiously, right? We're not necessarily hanging out just because as much. It's much more planned. So that can go either way when it comes to resetting your boundaries. On one front, someone who would never have texted a colleague to ask a question may need to adjust that boundary to say, I have to now allow for some text communications and say, okay, I'm going to be open to that, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Okay. And that's something that maybe they didn't do before. However, absolutely become very common in today's world. I have been on presentations and meetings where there's comments and conversations going on in the chat on the Zoom or whatever platform we're on, but also we're literally back channeling on our phones to say, hey, who's up next and what do you think about this? So these are things and conversations that we not may not have previously engaged in as much, but are like literally becoming a regular part of our lives. Now, here's the flip side of that. Just as you may need to adjust and allow some different form of communication, of connecting that you might not have before, you also do need to set clear boundaries for that. I know I had a very, lots of interesting things that happened in 2021. And one of them that I realized when I went back just to kind of look at things and check about things is to see where there were some places and some spaces where some boundaries have been crossed. And I had to take ownership of my role in that, right? Where, I was accepting some messages from certain people early in the morning or late in the evening. Now, granted, that happens as when there are emergencies or certain situations, but it can become a habit. It can become something that other people become very used to and abuse it. But if you're needing to make sure that you wire down, that you wind down from the day, then maybe you're putting your phone on silent after a certain hour, right? Maybe you're putting your email on, and this is something that was pre-pandemic. You're putting your email on saying, Friday after 5, so I will check in with you on Monday or whatever it may be. So those boundaries both may need to expand and contract as appropriate while still achieving your goal of connecting, of reaching out and building relationships with people in a way that works for you. Okay. So think about that because so many times, we talk about boundary setting, it's about contracting and not letting people cross them. Sometimes, however, we need to expand them because we need to expand our thinking when we're allowing certain things and recognizing that, guess what? There's still a boundary there. We've just shifted it to allow for whatever's going on with us at that time and moment. All right. So think about that. Boundaries can both expand and contract. And what we're talking about is doing a little mindset check of what that looks like for you as you are looking to build out your professional relationships, make them stronger, make them more impactful. Where do you need to expand and to allow people in a little bit more versus where you might need to contract some and adjust and make sure so that you can have that downtime that you need, that you can have that space so that you don't feel violated because you get, resentful and all of that stuff. We don't want all of that, right? That's not what we're going for here. We're looking to be able to continue to build our professional relationships in a way that's sustainable over time. And this is part of that evaluation. Okay. So make sure you do that. Last but not least, I want you to absolutely revisit your goals and realign your mindset accordingly. All right. And this is something that people don't necessarily do. It normally happens in a, what's the word? Not reflective, but in response to some problem, right? A reactive, that's the word I'm looking for. A reactive manner as opposed to a proactive one. And I want you to sit down and proactively take a look at what your goals are for the year, for the calendar year, for the next couple of years, whatever that may be, when it comes to your career, your business, and the people that you need to know, meet, and expand to in order to achieve those goals. All right. Okay. So, what does that look like? One of the common practices when you work with me, either one-on-one or in a group setting, or even just in my regular trainings, I'm always going to talk about how many people are you connecting with actively, not just passively. Who are you deliberately reaching out to because they can offer some support to something you are doing? Or remember that real authentic networking flows both ways. It's not just a take situation. We're not takers here. We're givers and receivers, which are different than being a taker, right? And so when you're doing that, who is it? What types of people do you know that you need to uh, build relationships with, create relationships with over the course of some time? So, if you're in a certain industry, so let's talk about that. You may not know the exact names, right? You know, though, however, that if you are trying to transition in a particular field, that perhaps you need to invite in and connect more with certain people in the new field, right? Or what if it's not that specific? What if it's even having conversations with people who may be exposed, who are around those types of people, right? I was trying to tell people, don't think so linearly when it comes to that, because that's very limiting, right? If I say, okay, I need a new real estate agent, and I need a new realtor. And so your first thought is, well, I'm just going to go call some realtors. Okay, that's fine. But guess who else you can talk to who has exposure to realtors? You can talk to lawyers. You can talk to accountants, right? You can talk to bankers, people who are in the industry who are affiliated with those types of people. Do you see how much more expansive that becomes? And that's what I encourage you to do in these times. It's super important because we are not always going to be able to go directly to the people or the things that we really want and need. We may need to expand our outlook, and by that way, get more access, as opposed to just saying, well, I tried to reach out to this one person and I never heard back. Okay, but let's talk about who are those other people that they may associate with. Okay. And that's what I mean by revisiting your goals and aligning your mindset accordingly, right? So that you can now say, you know what? I have a much larger pool of people that I can connect with that will help me to get to that goal. What do I need to do to make that happen? Right? How do I need to move? What are the spaces I need to move in? Do I need to make sure that I attend one, as things open up, or as, time allows it from the health perspectives? Do I need to make sure I still try to attend one event, one in-person event? Okay. Or maybe it's, hey, everyone's getting back on the bandwagon of hosting workshops and conferences, even if it's in the virtual space. So I need to schedule attending some virtual workshops this year. I need to put them on my calendar. Okay. That's what I mean by revisiting your goals and then realigning your networking mindset to to those goals so that you can continue to move forward. That's really the goal here, right? Is to make sure that you're still able to move forward in these unusual times. And in order to do it, it means we gotta, get rid of some of the junk upstairs in our head that's keeping us from reaching out, moving up. You may be uncomfortable, that's to be expected, but there's great growth when you are moving forward, and especially when you're doing so from a space that's not so comfortable. There's still plenty of room for growth. All right. Okay, that is it. That's what we have for today. We've been talking about realigning your networking mindset, and with some tips about things to do so that you can be in a better space, for this year as you continue to grow in your career, as you continue to grow in your business, and you can be well situated to still achieving the goals that you want to achieve. Okay? So there we are. Feel free, of course, always to leave comments, to reach out to me in the messages, and give me a DM on any of the platforms. And of course, always share, share, share. All right. And I invite you to go check out some new things that are here. Yes, we are in the middle of enrolling and accepting enrollments for the new 6-month Empowered Connections Authentic Networking program. I'm super excited about that. And or if you are still needing to really some more concentrated one-on-one work, we're open for some one-on-one VIP times as well. So just reach out to me. Happy to have that conversation. Let's get on a call and talk about what your needs are. And I look forward to following up with you in the coming days. All right. Take care. Have a fantastic week, everyone. Bye bye.